I'm Rosa. Standing at the altar, I took a deep breath and looked at Thomas, Samuel by his side. The simple wedding was filled with a quiet anticipation. As I started to walk down the aisle, each step was deliberate, supported by nothing but my resolve. It was a far cry from the chaos and deception I had endured. My story began in a large, silent house in New York. I was the only child of wealthy parents. My father, a shrewd and cautious businessman, built a successful company from the ground up. He was always careful with his trust, having experienced betrayal in the business world. My mother, a kind-hearted woman, passed away when I was just 8 years old. Her absence left a void in my life, and my father became my rock. He taught me two important lessons. Wealth could bring comfort but also attract the wrong kind of attention, and trust given carelessly could cost far more than money. I grew up learning to be independent, to think several steps ahead, and to be cautious in my relationships. After graduating from high school with top honors, my father sent me to study in London. He believed the education there would be better, and it would also keep me safe from those who might be interested in my family's wealth. I was reluctant to leave, but I knew my father had my best interests at heart. When I returned to New York as a young woman in my early 20s, I was confident and capable. I took on more responsibilities in my father's company. But then, my father started to show signs of illness. Doctors visited more often, and he began to take calls behind closed doors. I sensed something was wrong, and when I confronted him, he told me he had cancer. He was worried about my future, especially my relationships. He asked me careful questions about the men I was seeing, warning me not to mistake attentiveness for true devotion. His health declined rapidly, and in the end, he passed away. I felt as if the last solid structure in my life had collapsed. Not long after my father's death, I met Leo. It was an ordinary afternoon, and I had stepped out of my office for a break. I went to a quiet cafe I liked. Leo approached me, asking if he could sit at my table as there were no other empty ones. At first, we didn't talk much. But then, he made a comment about a book he was reading, and our conversation took off. We started meeting regularly. Leo worked for a regional branch of a large family-owned company. He was attentive, but not possessive. He never asked for favors or tried to use my connections. Our relationship grew naturally, and when he proposed, I accepted. I asked for 3 months to prepare, and he understood. Then Leo told me about his mother, Isabella. She was deaf and mute, having lost her hearing and speech as a child due to a severe illness. He said she was largely dependent on him and asked if she could live with us after the wedding. I agreed, thinking it was a reasonable request. At first, Isabella seemed quiet and unobtrusive, but as the wedding drew closer, things started to change. Leo and Isabella spent more time together, and their sign-language conversations became a mystery to me. I felt left out, but Leo always dismissed my concerns, saying it was just the way they communicated. Feeling frustrated and confused, I decided to learn sign language. I found a retired sign language instructor named Mrs. Thompson. Her house was warm and inviting, and her grandson, Jake, was a sweet 6-year-old boy. I started taking lessons with her, not telling Leo. As I became more proficient in sign language, I noticed that Leo and Isabella's conversations were not as innocent as they seemed. One evening, I overheard them talking about my assets and how they planned to get their hands on them after the wedding. I was shocked to learn that they were not a mother-son relationship, but accomplices in a scheme to defraud me. I knew I couldn't confront them directly. So, I quietly gathered evidence and went to the police. 2 days later, they were arrested. The house, which had once felt filled with deception, was finally empty. After the arrest, I went to visit Mrs. Thompson. She looked pale and weak, but she still welcomed me. I told her everything that had happened. She listened with concern and signed that I was right to be careful. A few days later, I received the news that she had passed away. Jake was left alone, and I felt a strong sense of responsibility towards him. I brought him home with me, but life didn't stop there. My company started to face problems. Contracts were delayed, and funds were redirected. I discovered that my deputy, Mr. Harris, whom I had trusted for years, was behind it all. He orchestrated a car accident to get rid of me so he could take over the company. I woke up in the hospital with a severe spinal injury. I couldn't move my legs, and the doctors talked about surgery and rehabilitation, but I was filled with doubt. I was ready to give up, thinking it was more practical to accept my limitations. Then Jake's father, David, showed up. He had been working in a remote area in Alaska. An accident had left him injured and isolated, and he had lost contact with the outside world. He didn't ask for money or custody of Jake. He just wanted to see his son. David saw that I was giving up. He told me his own story of struggling to survive in a remote cabin. He challenged me to not give up without trying. His words made me think. I decided to gather information about the surgery and eventually made the decision to go ahead. The surgery was difficult, and the recovery was long and painful. But with the support of David and Jake, I slowly started to regain my strength. I also took steps to rebuild my company, replacing those who had betrayed me and tightening the oversight. Now, as I stand here at the wedding, looking at Thomas, David, and Samuel, Jake, I realize that life has taught me many lessons. Wealth didn't protect me from betrayal, but patience and courage helped me overcome the challenges. And family, I've learned, is not defined by blood, but by the love and responsibility we share. As the celebration continues, I feel a sense of peace and clarity. I know that life will still have its challenges, but I'm ready to face them with the people I love by my side.